Boom, boom. Welcome to the Raw and the Real Athlete podcast with Chris and Cam. What up, Chris?
Not much, man. Not much. Ready to talk draft, ready to talk ramp.
Good, because I have questions about the draft.
Did you watch it?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was an interesting year. So the hot topic for today was the draft successful? So Cam, I'm looking at this not from a which team was the most successful with their picks. More so was the drafts, the way it was organized and distributed, was that a successful way to do so? As we know with COVID, this was the first year in the draft, I think ever, where they didn't have it in person. So with that being said, one of the things I wanted to kick off the conversation with is the second and third round, which is Friday, day 2. I think the views were up about 40% from last year. A lot of the coaches, there's been a lot of quotes coming from the coaches. One of them I tweeted out yesterday is that they actually found it to be like, what was the word, that heartwarming or something, like they found it to be really, really nice because a lot of the coaches, if you were watching the draft, were with their families while making the picks. So their kids were in the room, their kids got to get on TV. That was really exciting for them. We got a snapshot into their houses, which was really cool. It made it more real. To me, it was kind of like NFL meets XFL. XFL in the sense that it's more like, a lot of people know the XFL as being more raw, everybody being mic'd up without the ridiculousness. But it was a little bit of insight into the lives of the coaches and into the players who were also videoed while they were getting drafted with their families in their place of home.
And sometimes with their girlfriends.
Oh, yeah. Talk about that one.
Yeah, there's a video of I guess I can't remember the guy's name, but he got Wilson. He got drafted to Tennessee or something, and he started to cry in front of the camera, and then his girlfriend came into the shot and was blocking his face, covering him, and looking at the camera to get on TV too, and the mom just kind of snatched her up out of the screen, which, yeah.
See, I thought that was successful, though. I would say that was draft success because that was a moment for all the viewers at home to get a snapshot into that relationship. Did you see CeeDee Lamb?
No.
So CeeDee Lamb was the wide receiver from Oklahoma drafted by the Cowboys. He was on the couch, had his headphones on. He had 2 cell phones. And one of his cell phones, I guess his girlfriend took it out of his hand, and he snatched that hoe right back up. He grabbed that cell phone and snagged it right back. I don't know who he was talking to. And it's funny because I think his girlfriend, I could be getting this wrong. I hope I'm not getting this wrong. I don't want to put out false information. I think his current girlfriend is Trae Young, the basketball player's former girlfriend, the NBA All-Star Trae Young.
Oh.
And so I think he's over. I'm snatching. No, you ain't reading through my text.
Yeah. I think he's playing it safe. But it was, I guess, first of all, I'm not going to act like I love the NFL draft. Really, I don't understand why. I'm not invested enough to watch the NFL draft personally. But I guess it is cool to see how excited. For one, I like to see, I don't care if it's hockey or whatever the sport is, watching the athlete actually get their name called in that moment, seeing them cry and all the joy, all the work paid off. I get emotional. I love seeing that. Just like I love, when I'm at the arrival part of the airport and I get to see people seeing their loved ones for the first time. I like that. To me, that's what the draft is. But I don't see how people could watch for that many hours. But the fact that their numbers were up 40% on the second and third day or third round, I guess that speaks high numbers for how embedded football is into American culture now. And even more so now that with COVID and people can't go out, they're going to lean into sports more maybe.
Yeah, so I think the question really becomes the follow-up question to was the draft successful becomes, was it the medium that made it successful, doing it online with the snapshots of the families and the coaches and the players with their families at home? Or was it, and it was a little bit faster, especially the first round, I think it was a little bit faster. Or was it, we're so hungry for sports that we'll just watch anything, and that drove viewership? I don't really know. I like to think that it was the former, not the latter. I like to think that the snapshot, you said you like to watch the players. One of the things that makes the draft so appealing to people is the realness, the rawness of the emotions of the players getting drafted. And when you add layers to the dramatic part of the draft versus the football X's and O's part of the draft by inviting us into the homes of also the coaches. See, in the war room during regular drafts, it's all behind doors, right? Sometimes they'll bring in a snapshot, but we don't get to watch them like talking to each other on Zoom and chatting with each other. We got to do that this year. And for me, I think that was the kicker. I think that people latched on to that. They recognized it in day one and they stuck around in day two, in large part because of that connection, the thing that you're talking about.
Yeah. And I think on top of that, when something like the NFL draft and everyone's home and bored and has nothing to do, if you're on Twitter or in IG and you're seeing all these memes and posts hashtag NFL draft, you want to be involved in the conversation. Even if you don't watch the draft, you get to see things like the mom pulling the girl up off her guy, and you can tweet about
CD
that.
snagging. Give me that phone. Give me that.
Yes. So people want to be in on whatever is trending. So I'm sure that drove a lot more viewers that they would have never normally gotten.
Exactly. So I'm going to go with, to answer the question, I'm going to go with yes, it was successful. I think they might end up, I don't know how they're going to do it going forward. I don't know if they're going to stick to it. Now, they want the viewership, right? The viewership drives the numbers drive the money. So maybe they do the first round in person and then second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh round online. Maybe they go to like a hybrid model going forward. I'm not really sure.
Why would they even do it in person?
Well, I think there's also a draw financially. They host it in different cities.
Yeah,
so
it was supposed to be in Vegas.
Right. So Vegas is.
Did you hear of what they were how they're supposed to set it up?
No.
I think they're supposed to be like when they're drafted, they are taken over on water over one of those fountains.
Shut up. Awesome.
I heard that. I didn't know if that was real, but like, because it was like you're supposed to, I don't know. Yeah. But anyway, we don't want to stay too long on football because I'm excited to talk about RIMP, but
yes,
I'd say the draft was successful because more people watch. Let's see. Just to wrap this up, do the Cowboys make the playoffs?
Yes. I think
you don't believe that?
Yeah, no, I do. But yeah. My question mark is twofold. Secondary coach, right? So McCarthy's the new coach. Listen, it can't get worse than Jason Garrett. And the secondary is still suspect. They drafted a guy in the second round from Bama. I didn't watch enough of him to really have an opinion on him. He's from Bama, so he's probably a 4 or 5-star recruit. So at least he's got some talent. But I heard whispers from some of my contacts that he's lazy. And I don't like drafting lazy people. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know the guy personally, but I think they need secondary help. I think they got a steal in the later rounds as an edge rusher. I think he's from Utah. I think that was a great pick. He actually murdered the 18th overall pick from USC in the game that they played. He got 4 pressures and a sack that game. He destroyed that guy. So I think they got a steal there. I think they make the playoffs as a product of their division because the Redskins are garbage. The Giants are garbage. The Eagles are good. Their defense is good, but their offense, I don't trust it. I don't trust Wentz's health. I think their wide receiver core is old and not very good. I don't know who their running back is. I don't trust in the Eagles offense. So yeah, I got the Cowboys being a byproduct of their division. They definitely have the best roster in the division. We'll just see if the coaching comes through.
You have a lot of reasons to cover up your bias that you just want the Cowboys to win no matter what. So I'll just say, go Chiefs.
Whatever, man. Whatever. Yeah. Ride that Super Bowl. That's fine. Yeah, ride the Super Bowl.
First time in my lifetime.
Super Bowl since I was 2.
This was the first one in 30 years, I think.
Yeah.
They only won 1. Wow. So, all right. Now, today we're talking about RAMP. So RAMP is kind of your topic, your expertise, and you're going to be kind of leading the topic on this one.
Yeah, so let's jump right in. We're going to be doing a lot of these episodes through the lens of RAMP. How I describe it to you, Cam, and how I'll describe it to our viewers is that it's kind of like wearing glasses. So as we go forward with some of these episodes and we look to conceptualize some of the player athlete concerns that we're going to touch on, we're going to do it through this lens. So we're going to encapsulate and envision the athlete in these 4 areas, R, A, M, and P, which stands for relationships, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And I'm not going to go into all the specifics of each 4. We'll just start with kind of the overview, the umbrella. But before I get into what the model means, let me give you some background into how it came into being for me. So my mental health story starts when I was around 5. I was diagnosed with ADHD, combined presentation, bipolar 2, conduct disorder, and oppositional defiant disorder. Basically what that means is I was really hyper and angry. That's the short version of those diagnoses, and emotionally unstable. So that led to 10 years of therapy between ages 5 and 15. It led to 11 inpatient hospital stays between ages 5 and 4th grade. I turned like 11 that summer or something like that. Because I was actually in the hospital, my last hospital stay during my birthday, which was horrible. And that hospital was a 3-month stay in Austin, Texas, where my roommate was a positive schizophrenic, and his name was Eddie. Positive schizophrenia is the one you see in the movies where you have hallucinations. And it just so happens that he would see dead people, and the movie Sixth Sense had recently come out. So that was my roommate, and they had to come in and sedate him at night so that he could go to sleep. And then I was on medication from ages 5 to 18, at one point taking 10, 11, or 12 pills a day, where I'd pop them in the morning, and then I'd go to lunch and get some more just to get me through the school day. The summary version is around age 15, I realized that, okay, I need something tangible, something contextual to let a lot of this anger go. I couldn't let it go. I had to displace it. And so I found sports. I found collision sports, to be more specific, which was football. And then I found contact sport, which was basketball. And those two things really helped to kind of honestly save my life. Fast forward to graduate school, continued playing sports, transitioned to bodybuilding, because I still needed that outlet. And while I was in graduate school, I was in the exercise and health psychology research lab. And I was doing some work with a doc student on his dissertation. And while I was scrolling through the literature over and over and over again, just going through all these files, I noticed themes. I noticed themes of A, M, and P: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. 3 things that in the sports psychology and exercise and health psychology literature are pretty pronounced. Okay, it's pretty obvious that those are things that a lot of different people are looking at as facets of success, or helping somebody get to success in the area of health, exercise, and sports. And so I tied those themes together and created AMP without the R. And then I said, this just doesn't feel right. There seems like a piece missing. Now, when I was an undergrad, I was in a social psychology research lab where we did a lot of relationship studies. And I said, I'm going to add R, I'm going to add relationships. And it created RAMP. And my purpose was really to find at that time a way to provide athletes with a preventative care system, something that can be used in the off season, but then can also translate when implemented in the off season to in-season work, where athletes, coaches, families are all speaking the same language and focusing on the same things, so they don't have to have a clinician present in order to access the current status of the mental health and performance of the athlete. And so bada bing, bada boom, RAMP was born. Over time, though, I realized that this was more applicable to other populations than just athletes. So I have since moved it to esports. I've moved it to family dynamic, and it works really, really well. So that's where RAMP stems from. What it's for, again, is creating that shared language. Oftentimes when you have a 53-man roster, if we take football for an example, you have a lot of personalities there. You have a lot of coaching personalities and player personalities. And you need a way to bridge the age gaps, the interest gaps, the personality gaps, and focus on a particular lane when you're communicating about the mental health and performance of the athlete. And RAMP is that lane. So if you can get coach that's 45 years old from New Jersey to speak the same language as 18-year-old kid from Alabama, then they're going to have more success with managing that kid's mental health and performance, because we're looking at the same things and speaking the same lingo. It's like going to a different country, Cam, where if I go to Japan and I try to order food, but I don't know how to speak the language, I just have to point. How successful am I going to be at getting the outcome that I want? Probably not very.
No,
right?
No, not very.
I'm going to get some nasty ass food. I'm going to be eating cat or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But right, like I want sushi and then cat comes out. I don't know. I don't want to.
Yeah.
But you get it, right? Like having the wrong language, speaking different languages, focusing on different things, accidentally, unintentionally or intentionally leads to miscommunication, which leads to a lack of success. So RAMP comes in and it fills that void. So yeah, it's used to provide that shared language and to accelerate your goals and potential.
Okay. You said that you've done with athletes, and that makes sense. When you speak about the e-athletes or esports,
Mhm.
I guess theirs is less physical and more mental. Would you say that working with esports will be mostly mental? Because
Well,
I don't know
yeah,
what you would work with them on.
it's the same. It's the same, and I think that's the misconception is, there's only one aspect of ramp that could even be utilized through a physical avenue, and that's mastery. R, A, and P are really more theoretical understandings, and then execution from M. M is, let me put it this way: when I have a parent or a coach come to me or a client come to me and they say, "Hey, I need to work on getting better at X thing," or "My player has performance anxiety," most people's minds are accustomed, especially males, to go into solution. They go straight to, how do I solve this, right? Nail in the head type of thing, where your girlfriend has a nail in her head and you just want to pull it out because you're like, I just want to help. She's like, no, I just want you to listen to me.
Yeah.
And you just want to pull that bad boy out. A lot of people, they go to M. They go straight to M. And that's usually the wrong way, because the underlying problem typically takes place in R, A, or P. And if you solve the underlying problem, I like to say the problem behind the problem is the problem. If you can solve the underlying problem, you gain access to facilitating consistently the behaviors that you want to go achieve the goal, which is M. So with esports athletes, there's the mastery piece, the actual performance piece. You typically leave that to the coach. I don't come in and teach the kids how to perform at their game better. I work on the underlying problems, help them figure that out, which opens the door for them to have increased focus, longevity, interest, passion for the thing that they're doing, so that they could be more successful. So it really doesn't matter. And that's why I'm able to transition it to families too. Because again, let's say there's communication issues at home. Well, that's an M issue. If we can focus on you guys understanding your R, your A, and your P, we'll open the door for communication. And then I can give that to you. So it doesn't really matter if it's physical or not.
Let's go into detail of what the R is for.
Okay. So R is for relationships. There's 3 types of relationships that I teach people about. Okay. Now you have to keep in mind that in my head, I have a bunch of research articles and a bunch of examples and longitudinal studies and meta-analysis studies. And I have to take all that and then create language that I could write into a book or share with you that makes sense to you. So I break that down into 3 different types of relationships: self, others, world. Relationship with self is exactly what it sounds like. It's the self-esteem, self-efficacy piece. Relationship with others is the one that people are most familiar with, which is, what are my relationships with my coaches like, and my family environment like, and my girlfriend like. Relationship with the world is, what is my relation to a belief? So if I believe that only rich people can be successful in life because they already have a step up. So if you come from a rich family, you have the head start, you could be more successful. And if you're not, then you're screwed. Then I can look at myself in relation to that belief and say, well, I'm not rich, so I'm screwed. So that's my relationship with the world. It's one of, well, I got a bad hand based on that, right? And all 3 of those play into each other. So if I believe I got a bad hand, go ahead.
Will that fall into a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset?
Yeah, it can. It can, depending on what the relationship with the world is. Now, one of these, if you have an R issue, one of these is going to be at fault, and it will then bleed into the other. So if my relationship with the world is the one I explained to you, and I believe that only rich people can get ahead and I'm not rich, well, now I feel like maybe I'm down on myself because I wasn't, depending on my beliefs religiously, I wasn't born to be successful, or I wasn't given that opportunity, or the world is out to get me. And so I'm just not as important as the rich people, or I'm not as capable of making change. So then my relationship with self suffers. And because I just think, well, I'm not worthy, I'm not part of that group. When I go enter other relationships, world, self, others, when I go enter other relationships, I now come in there with a pessimistic view. I'm not the most exciting
Chip on your
person
shoulder
to be around. Yeah. Now
Yeah.
I'm the guy who's like constantly rubbing people the wrong way, especially if they're in the category that I'm not.
Yeah.
And it makes relationships with others very difficult.
So my question is, and this is for me, how does one change their reality?
I can't answer that question for you here. That's too big of a question.
Yeah.
That's something that we can break down maybe in a
That's gonna be 12 years of therapy.
It's more complicated than a specific answer that I can give you. That'd really be something that we could break down.
But it's something you can work on.
It's definitely something you can work on. If I had to summarize it, if you held a gun to my head and said, Chris, you got to summarize it for everybody here live, I would say mental diet. That's it, mental diet. So just like a physical diet, if we know, we'll take I am statements as an example. So they've done studies on I am statements, which is like, I am smart, I am capable, I am powerful, whatever it is. If I'm about to work out, I am strong. If you say those over and over and over again, you can actually inflate the level of narcissism and self-belief temporarily, kind of like a Band-Aid or like a steroid injection temporarily. And it comes down, but we know that if you do that enough, if you do I am statements enough, or you do things like that enough, you will begin to conceptualize and believe it. That's one example of many things that we would need to break down to answer your question appropriately.
To that one, and this is, again, a personal question on my part.
Sure.
Because when I got into boxing to lose the weight, and then I became confident, then I became a little confident, but that confidence gave me the confidence to try other things. And whether I was good at those things or not, like I was good at boxing, I tried comedy. Whether I was good at comedy or not, I was so confident in myself that I knew the first time I got off stage, I was amazing. Hindsight, I look back, I was terrible. But the confidence became contagious, and confidence builds more confidence, and then you become a narcissist. How do you avoid that from happening? Isn't that a slippery slope?
Let me answer a question you didn't ask first, then I'll get to that one. Or maybe not a question so much as a statement. You said your relationship with self grew as you became more confident. So one of the things we do for growing relationship with self is place the individual in a position to be successful. So if you're naturally talented at something, we want to place you there first and foremost. Because as you become affirmed by your teammates or your peers or whatever, teachers, doesn't matter if you're good at school, sports, whatever, you begin to have this self-belief, and then we can carry that over. What that does is it usually increases autonomy. As I become more motivated and the more I believe in myself and my capabilities as a human as a whole, the more likely I am to make my own decisions, whether they're good or not. You went into comedy, whether they're good or not, you made that decision. No one forced you to go into comedy, but you made that decision because you had a belief in self that you could do that. So you pulled the trigger. I just wanted to point that out, that the R transitioned to the A there for you, and you probably didn't even know it. Right now, your mastery for comedy wasn't there, and that's why you said it wasn't a success, right?
Yeah, I would say it gave me the confidence to do it. I wasn't good, but I didn't realize it, so I just continued to do it, and I wasn't discouraged. And I guess the A bled into the mastery part of it, I guess.
Right. So to answer your follow-up question, which was, or not your actual question, which was, what about the slippery slope? We know that R, A, M, and P can all, think of all of them on an individual spectrum. So if I have somebody, I actually have a client right now who works with United Healthcare. He's founding his own business when it comes to like pre-diabetic healthcare. He wants to form a holistic business for this. Long story short, this guy, his autonomy is through the roof. He's 100% accountable to himself, not afraid to work, makes his own decisions, not afraid to be a leader. But his relationship with his family suffers because of it, because he'll work from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., spend a little bit of time with his family, go back to work at 10 p.m. and then stay up late again. And he took it too far. So with your ego going down that road, that's why you have the other pillars of the ramp to reel it in. If I see that R is suffering because of A, then I know we've gone too far, that we have to heal R or pull back on A, or both. So the other three, whichever one your pain point is, if your ego is getting too large, your relationship with self is getting too large, we just categorize that as R. We have to figure out either way to bring that down in combination with bringing up A, M, and P, or using those three to counterbalance the issue in R. So the 4 pillars exist as kind of like a checks and balance system.
Okay, that's actually, I didn't think you'd be able to answer that question. I'm impressed.
I should be able to answer the question because it's my model.
True. All right.
Let me give you a story. Is that okay, Rand?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me give me because this is related to R. So I had an athlete in 2017. I'm gonna try to keep any descriptors out of it. This individual went to a camp. This is one of my favorite stories. Great kid. Went to a camp in the summer of 2017. Very notorious university he went to. Long story short, this individual, well, now it's a he was not doing very well at this camp. Okay, he was not performing at his level of capability. he got really down on himself. So he went to the dining halls and he took a knife back to his dorm that night where he was staying and contemplated suicide. He ended up calling his family and they talked him down. He didn't attempt and they got him in with me. Now, most people would go automatically to a suicide checklist, to major depressive disorder or some form of depression. It could be dysthymia, it could be bipolar depression, you know, it could be whatever. But I didn't see it that way. I saw it very much as an adjustment disorder, predominantly depression. I saw it after I got more information from him and his family dynamic as an issue with R, in particular, his relationship with his dad. His dad was putting so much pressure on him to go to college because they come from a poor family and they needed the money. They needed the scholarship money to go to college. His dad was putting so much pressure on this kid that he conceptualized in his mind that he was a complete failure if he didn't get that scholarship, that D1 scholarship, because that's what he was fighting for at the time. And so we had to actually mend that relationship with other, in this case, dad, in order to help lift what most people I think would just automatically assume is clinical depression. But I didn't see it that way. And as we lifted that, you saw increases in his autonomy, his mastery, and his purpose. He actually continued to progress in his sport, did end up getting 3 Division I offers, is currently playing Division I sports right now. But I think a lot of people, my problem with sports psychology in general, and this is where RAMP came in too. I didn't give this in my background, Cam, is I think most people, they look at time of performance. How do I shoot the free throw better? How do I make the field goal? What happens if I throw an interception? How do I bring myself back into the now? This is what most of the science is focused on. And I said, that's wrong. That's bullshit. That's wrong, because these are humans, and humans exist 7 days a week, not for 3 hours. And so I said, there's got to be something that can help during the 6 days and 21 hours of their life outside of the actual time of performance. And when you healed going back to my story, when you healed his relationship with his family, and now they have a wonderful, wonderful relationship. When you heal that family issue, it's amazing how everything else just kind of opens up, because that was his pain point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that actually makes sense. What you said earlier was it's the problem behind the problem. That's the actual problem. I think that's a point where I'm starting to get enlightened, to the point where I'm starting to figure that out in my own personal life. But I'm 31. I don't think I didn't know that these were underlying problems when I was 18, when I was 19, when I was 20, when I was on the team, when I was traveling, when I had the confidence. And of course, during that time, my shit don't stink. So I think it would be nearly impossible without a coach forcing me, for me to seek any type of mental coaching or mental health experts or advice.
I'm glad you brought that up. So we know male help, this is one of the things I love studying too, is male help-seeking behaviors. So there's a lot of literature on the difference between, like men and couples counseling. Men are notorious for not wanting to be a part of that, especially if it's the clinician is female. So how do we convince a male? Now I work with female athletes too, but how do we convince a male who is also a teenager or young adult to come and get services? The answer is usually you don't. The answer is usually you force it. And this is where coaches need to listen to me. This, as an off-season program integrated into your off-season work, forces the athlete contextually to pay attention to this. If I come and I say, hey, come hire me in my services to the kid or to the parent of the kid, my success rate's way low. Not because they don't think that it's important, but because they don't think it's important enough to invest money in, or it's just not as high as, let me go get the physical taken care of because we have to make sure he can run a 40 faster because that's going to secure his dollars. That's the way the thinking is. What I have to do is I have to get coaches on board. Parents too, but really coaches, because if I'm having to attend 2-a-days in the off season already, and this is built into that program, I'm going to listen to it, not necessarily because in the beginning I do or I don't want to, but because my coach is telling me I have to. And we know from the literature, it usually takes 4 sessions therapeutically to build an effective therapeutic relationship. We also know from the literature, based on common factors model, that 40% of successful therapeutic outcomes is the therapeutic relationship. So you have to kind of force those first 4 sessions, if you will, or the beginning stages of RAMP sometimes, to get the kids to buy in. It is what it is. And like you said, when you're that age, you're like, what the hell is this? I don't need this shit.
Yeah.
But if it's forced, and if you give me enough time to try to connect with the kid, and I told you this before, you know, a lot of people to look at me as wearing a purple shirt. Who the hell is this guy? This white guy coming up in here. But if I can go walk over to the deadlift rack and deadlift 500 pounds at 170 pounds body weight, the kids are going to listen. They're going to listen. You just need the opportunity to show them your credibility. And sometimes that takes a little skew from the coaches.
Yeah. And what's kind of weird and what I've learned now with age is I'm 31 and I found out there are people who are 23 and way more emotionally intelligent than I am and have figured things out about themselves that I'm still working on. And the opposite of that, there's guys I've met that are 50, 60 that haven't figured that out. So you being such a younger guy, at first I would think it would be harder for you to gain the respect of athletes being so young. But now that I think about it, as an athlete, I would listen to you before I listened to somebody who was 50 who couldn't deadlift 500 pounds. I think I would trust your advice because you are actually there at the age of when you're dealing with not just troubles that every generation's dealt with, but troubles involving social media as well.
Right. So at the time of the recording, I'm 27, right? So what you have to, yeah, I know, dude. I'm blessed. I'm trying to age like fine wine. I'm trying to Brad Pitt it. I'm trying to Brad Pitt it over here, man. So what you have to keep in mind is that when you're young, demonstrations of credibility are often with athletes. Demonstrations of credibility are often physical. Getting in the trenches with the kids. As you get older, demonstrations of credibility often come from winning. Did you succeed? What is your platform? Do other coaches respect you? Dave Aranda, the head coach of Baylor, dude's scrawny. I doubt he can deadlift 500 pounds. But he doesn't need to because he's a head coach. He just won a national championship with LSU. Right? So in the beginning, when you're younger, a lot of it is, it's not about the degrees. I don't have them here. They're at my office. But it's not about the degrees. You can point to those and kids don't give a shit. They don't care. Parents do. Coaches sometimes do. Sometimes. I'm going to highlight that because sometimes coaches just want to live in their bubbles. But the kids, they really value when you're younger and you look like I do. Can you push the weight? Are you like me? Can you come out here and cover me? Are you competitive like me? Are you fearful? You know, a lot of these kids, they come from rough areas. They don't want some guy who just puts on a suit and a tie and comes in and tells them. I had a 10-year vet quarterback. Can't name names, confidentiality. But I had a quarterback I worked with. He played drafted by the Redskins, played for a couple other teams through his career. And he was one of my clients, and his son was actually one of my clients. And when I was working with him, he told me, when I was in the league, we had what I called Hannibal Lecters, old-ass white dudes that were supposed to help us with our sports psychology, but nobody ever went to them. He called them Hannibal Lecters, just old-ass white dudes. We were just trying to like leech off of the athlete. It's different. It's different. You have to build credibility in the long run, but in the beginning, you have to be able to connect. All about connecting.
Yeah, I would say as an athlete on Team USA, we have an Irish coach. He's a great coach. He's an Olympic coach from Ireland. He moved to America to coach Team USA. Sounds odd, but makes sense. But I couldn't listen to him. I had no interest, and I know he's very accomplished. He's gotten all these medals for other boxers that are more accomplished than I am. But being an old Irish white guy, I had no interest in listening to anything he said. There's another coach, Coach K. Coach K is a cool dude. I don't know how old Coach K is. He's probably a little older, but he's young at heart. He's maybe about 40, if that.
Right.
But I listen, even though Coach K doesn't have the accomplishments that Billy has, I will listen to K. And if K told me to listen to Billy, that's why I listen to Billy. So I guess athletes might need conduit to the coaches, and I see you being that person.
It depends, man. Like, it really depends. Sometimes players aren't going to vibe with me. I don't pretend that all the players are going to vibe with me. In those cases, the coaches need to counterbalance that issue and say, no, listen to this guy. In the case where they do vibe with me, we got to get the coaches on board with this.
Okay. And I'll ask a question, because the issue we have in boxing is we always focus on the 10 athletes. Out of the 60,000 members in America, we only care about 10, and that's the Olympic athletes. But all this money is just going into 10 athletes, yet 60,000 athletes at the grassroots level aren't getting the attention they need. So I don't want this to be advice for just D1 schools. What about the athletes who aren't D1, who who believe that this will actually help them, but they don't have the resources or I guess they don't know,
Awesome.
They can't afford to get help.
Yeah, they can't. Now listen, raw and real, no bullshit. I'm going to charge for my time because I'm really good at what I do. But I have found a way to circumvent the issue that you're talking about. And the way to circumvent that is to teach once a year. I come in and I teach ramp to a coaching staff or a family as a one-time fee. I come in, I teach you, it's for the full year. And with each teaching, assuming that, I come in a couple of years in a row and that coaching staff doesn't just all disappear and fly away, the culture will be built. I won't have to come back anymore. Everybody's on the same page. Some coaches coach in the same place for 20 years. D3, D2, D1, high school, doesn't matter. But if they coached in the same place for that long and they started ramp 2 decades ago, chances are they're still doing ramp because it's cultural. And head coaches especially, I believe that head coaches are meant to be CEOs. Again, I'm going back to football, right?
I like that.
Well, yeah. And again, I'm going back to football because you have so many players, maybe even basketball. It's different when you have individual sports like tennis, but
boxing.
Or boxing, right? Totally, like boxing, right? But when you have the footballs, the basketballs, the things when you have larger rosters, coaches are meant to be CEOs. So CEOs really have 2 responsibilities in business, and I think it's transferable to sports. One is human equity and human time distribution. The other is financial equity and financial distribution. So you have to obtain and satisfy good people. Those are called good players. And then you want to keep them happy while they're there so they don't request a trade or transfer out, right? The other is financial. How are we distributing our finances to build up X program, X business, X player? So CEOs, these coaches, it doesn't matter what level you're at, right? If you're the head coach, D3 high school, and you don't have a lot of money, to answer your question, Cam, you don't have a lot of money. You don't need a lot of money because you don't have to hire me hourly. You just got to hire me for 6 weeks. I'll come in, I'll teach it to you. And then after there, you can just contact me, shoot me a message. Hey, am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? Do you want to come see the kids? Sure. I'd love to come by and see the kids. You don't have to charge. I'm not going to charge for, that's just 45 minutes. So this is going to be, X percentage of my hourly rate. I'm going to come in here and I am going to charge for my time because I came up with this and I'm running a business. But at the same time, it is about the kids. So I found a way to make it to where you don't have to hire me full time on a salary, wage per year to keep me around. I can come in a one-time stop, teach to you. You have questions, let me know at the end, and we'll cover that, make sure your kids are good. That keeps the cost low.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to hear more about RAMP, and we'll be looking through all of these athletes' problems and solutions through the lens of RAMP in the future, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. And as we break this down, again, relationships, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. We'll break these 4 things down more as we go. But I just wanted to introduce it. You can also read about it. I have 2 eBooks out right now. It's going to be a 5-part series. Cam, I think you've read the first one. But those are a good way to also get some background. And I require each of my new clients to actually read that between session 1 and session 2, the intro. Anyway, I don't require them to read the most.
It's like 8 pages. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not very long. It serves simply as basically the book version of what we did today, which is here's this introduction to what this is. And then I come in and I clear up some of the questions because we're creating language, and language, you have to be able to demonstrate rhetoric, syntax, and diction to me in a healthy way to demonstrate your understanding of RAMP, just like any other language.
Awesome. Excited to get more into it into the future. Let's wrap this one up.
Yes. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, please subscribe, share. I don't know what format you're watching this or listening to this in, but please distribute this. Let's help athletes and coaches and families around the country and around the world get access to this content so they can get what they need.
I concur. All right, guys. Later.